Where'd Gary go?
I don't know.
Well, someone's in the bathroom, so we'll all just shame him when he walks back in here. There he is.
We will call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker,
Here.
Densberger,
Here.
Jeffers,
Here.
Call,
Here.
Mayor Mingus.
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Of course, no official business will be conducted. This is a working session on streets, and I'll turn over to Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. Every year, we try to do an update on the streets just to show where we are at. This year is no different. I can't remember if we had a council meeting update last year, but I'm going to turn it over to Pat real quickly. The only unknown here, our last ratings were done in, was it November? October, November? So the only unknown is how our streets will fare after the winter. Freeze and thaw are very hard on our roads, and it can create issues that we didn't know were there, or at least make them a lot worse by the time a season is over. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time now. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Pat. As he's talking, might have some interjection, but otherwise he's going to, I guess, take most of it. Dennis, you want to say anything starting out?
I don't have anything. I know we reviewed this over with Pat over the last couple of weeks, so he's got some good slides. If you guys can't see or want to come down to see better, by all means, invite you to be able to get a good look at these. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. So as Commissioner Decker said, the last rating was done in November. We traditionally do that in November because generally we have an opportunity for a 1 to 2 week time period so that we can actually see the streets in a dry condition. It's tough this time of the year to actually get that time frame where we actually have a dry enough area, enough time frame that we can actually make a solid rating for each street. So that's why we do it in November. Again, we'll do it in November next year, but we do anticipate some amount of deterioration because of the freeze thaw. We've been lucky the last couple of years with the generally mild winters that we've had, and I'll say a little bit more about that. So one of the things we've talked about in the past is what an ideal rating of streets would be. So you may recall we have a 1 through 10 rating. We would not like to see any streets like this or this. This was Sabrina a number of years ago. We would not like to see any streets like this, which is a 3 rating or a 4 rating. We would generally try to accept streets in a 5 condition, maybe 20% of the streets in this type of street condition, 25 in this, 25 at a 7 rating, 15% at an 8 rating, 10% at a 9, and probably a 5% at a 10. So the green line you see here, right, the solid green line, that's our ideal rating. So as I said, we would have some in the 4 to 5 range, but nothing from 4 and below. We would like to see that as our ideal rating. Now, in 2013, that's this blue one. That's where we were. Since then, we had the big program in 2015, which if you look over here onto the right, that's where you see this blip of increase in that higher range. Since then, it's gone down. But the general feel of this curve says that it's from 2013, the street rating is going down, but it's also getting wider. We're actually going to the left on that. That's a little bit of a concern because, you may remember, I think it was 2013 when we had a bad freeze-thaw winter and we had to put an additional $1 million into the budget in order to address streets that got so bad that we just had to till and overlay those. That was in the Liberty Village area. This graph kind of shows the top green is the bituminous price, so the asphalt price. Now that's a little bit swayed from last year's, the economy that we had last year. You may recall that we took advantage of the economy, quote unquote, took advantage of it, but we were actually being able to save a couple $100,000 on the parking lot up at the East Side Soccer Field. So all indications from the people I've spoken with says that this may be another down year again. So if that opportunity exists, I would encourage you to think outside the box and see what can be done with blacktop prices. But traditionally, since 2001, we've tracked that, and traditionally, it's gone up.
What was the price in 2001, Pat? Was it $90? Is that
I
correct?
think it was actually $90, $85 to $90 a ton, and we didn't do, I think it was Springfield and Mueller that we did in 2016, we were paying $145 a ton. The red line represents the amount of the program and how it's fluctuated over the years. This chart is the amount of the program also. Again, it's fluctuated over the years. Traditionally, we run in the $1.5 million, I would say, is kind of an average amount that we've experienced in the past. And in 2015 and in 2009, they were both 2.5 million. And now in 2016, I believe it was 500,000. And then in 2017, 340,000. Those are the actual numbers. This is the amount of the program, this listing here, that first column. This is the amount of the MFT funds over the years, and this is the amount of other funds. These two cells right here in 2016 and 17 denote that we didn't have any other extra funds. In fact, SALT was taken out of MFT, so that's why you see a reduced MFT amount here. SALT was paid for from MFT. It was kind of I don't want to say a swapping of shells, but it kind of was in order to pay back some of that 2015 program. This chart you've seen before, and I'll just gloss over it real quick, but I think we created this in 2009 based on the total square yards that we have in the city. And if we were overlaying that first year and doing some maintenance situations every 10 to 15 years, we would be on a 62-year cycle if back in 2009 we were spending $2.4 million. Right now, we increased that, I think 5% a year, and it should be around $3.4 million. So that means, again, that if we were spending that street would get overlaid every 62 years. With the depleted budgets, we've thought outside the box, and we think we've got a good program going of heat scarifying and seal coating, and now we've added an oil on top of that seal coating to try and reduce the loose rocks. It seems to be working well. In fact, I was just out a week and a half ago taking a look at the streets that we did last year and comparing that to some streets in another municipality where we didn't do the oil on top, the GSB, and there was a significant difference in the amount of loose rock. I think that helps to reduce the phone calls that Public Works gets. It seems to function better and end up with a better product. So for that 10% more that we're paying for that extra added oil on top, it seems to be working for us. IDOT was down. We're doing an experimental project on that because we want to use MFT funds, but IDOT was down, and they were very impressed with that process and anxious about what we're going to see as a success. We've been doing it that way, except the heat scarification and seal coat for 20-plus years. We just added that last oil layer on top of that to reduce the rock. So Country Lane was one that this was taken in 2014. On the right-hand side, this is kind of indicative of what we have where next to the curb line or in somewhere in that roadway, you have deterioration. We come through and we heat scarify and we seal coat Now, this one in particular, we didn't have the GSB on top, but going from this to this was a vast improvement, and then this is it 2 years later. Country Lane, again, a different section of it. Again, we see all the cracks that we have in here, and the heat scarification and the seal coat, and then 2 years later. Rue Voutilac, this was pretty extreme. We take that section right there on the right-hand side and we try to patch that, spray patch that, whether that's with the city's forces or with contract forces. And then again, we heat scarify and seal coat that. The difference in, this was in 2012. And you can see in 2 years later, how much lighter the pavement is. And that's the oxidation of the sun. Those patches seem to be getting worse and more brittle and alligatored more. Even to this in 2014, you can see that the number of cracks that have deteriorated over those years. So that's the kind of street that we're taking, and we're turning it into this. And then this is that 2 years later. So we still don't have a reflection back through on some of those. Now, we try to catch the majority of those situations where we have those patches. But all in all, I think it's a vast improvement and a good use of the city's money with the condition of the streets that we have. This was Georgia, and this is Georgia after heat scarification. Timber Lane was, we actually brought this picture up, I think, back in 2012, and it still is looking good today.
There was a question of whether we could do timber with the scarification process. In fact, some really thought we could not. So Pat used his engineering knowledge and made a decision that we could, and fortunately it's been, I guess, a good decision for us. It's worked well.
And one thing on timber that's interesting is in this picture, you can see this yellow line going across the road. That's indicative of a Julie locate, that there was some issue there. And in 2017, you can see this patch right here. So again, we've got a cut in the pavement, and I was out there a few weeks ago, and this edge right here is actually deteriorating because water's actually being able to get down into that patch and deteriorate that. So one of our major goals in trying to preserve a roadway is just to seal it up. So if we could seal that up, whether it's with seal coat, heat scarification, or a combination of the two, that's going to help preserve our roads.
Just out of curiosity, I know on Howard, we had a lot of issues there, and they went back and remedied that. Did they use that same process?
Yes.
We use the GSB there as well, right?
Yes. Yep.
And
Yeah, because man, I tell you what a difference that made between.
oh, so many people up there are thrilled. And there was an issue with the scarification process the first time, wasn't there? Didn't we have, or was it just?
I think it was the spray patching.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
okay.
the spray patch
All right.
over the whole street.
So when we went back with the GSB, that was one of the areas that I was really hopeful that it would do well. And it's, I remember driving on it for the first time. It looks like a brand-new road. It's porous, I mean, or maybe not porous, but it feels like there's some texture to it. But it is a nice, smooth road, and everyone that I know that lives in that neighborhood is just thrilled with it.
One of the things you may see if you're over in the Fluppy area, in the parking lot, we have some test patterns there. And we're trying a couple different things in there because most of the time you don't normally seal coat in a parking lot. But we're trying a couple different things that we're going to test out to see what can actually be done with that parking lot. And it's in a traffic area. It's right as soon as you come off the concrete entrance off of Route 8. And you'll see I've got my handwriting in there in paint. And so we'll continue to observe that and see how it goes. This is a map that we made, Rick and I have made over the years, just some major roadways in the city of East Peoria. And when I say major roadways, I'm depicting them by how would I get from point A to point B? What are those major spokes of our city that we absolutely need to keep functional in order for traffic to move from point A to point B? So in the red-colored roadways, I'm classifying as bad. And if we were just going to overlay those roadways, I would say that that's probably close to the $8 million range. If you're going to actually reconstruct those roadways, Fairlane is one that comes to mind, where we might actually need to reconstruct portions of that road. Centennial Hill is another one, Highview is another one. You would probably triple that cost, from that 8 million to 24 million. Now, we do have some other roads like Grange over here that need some additional work. It's not wide enough. You can see if you go along on Grange that the shoulders, they're either non-existent or breaking off. Springfield Road is another one that has this long stretch of Springfield Road, and not only has that 5-foot outer edge of Springfield Road that's in disrepair, but what's been covered up over the years is the curb and gutter itself. If we uncover that curb and gutter, and we have in places, it virtually needs to be replaced, the entire section. The last section of Springfield Road is again in need, I think, of some widening or some type of additional work that's going to help enhance that so that those shoulders don't deteriorate.
Springfield Road's a good example. If y'all remember, I guess 7-8 years ago, we went through there and we did some extensive crack sealing. And it's not the prettiest. I received complaints about how it looks, but what it's done for the road is it has added years to the life of the road. If not for that, we believe we would, it would not be blue on this map, it would be in the red area, and it's a very long road. So that little bit of maintenance that we did, and it's all the way out, and may not be the prettiest, but it is still a nice, smooth road with very few potholes.
Patrick, Commissioner Decker and I get tons of complaints on Highview Road, the concrete. The status of that road, what is it as far as the color?
I classified that as a red.
Red?
Yeah, that's this section right here. And that's, you may remember we did Illini Drive, which still
Right.
looks pretty good today. So that's a green. And then as soon as you get up on top of the hill, it starts to deteriorate pretty fast. And then that's that blacktop section, and then it goes into the concrete section. And even the area that goes around Armstrong School in the curve there, that was part of the stimulus program, I think we did in 2009 or so. And it's interesting to look at that, and I continue to take pictures to see the deterioration over time. And then you get into Centennial, same situation. We have a concrete street that we did extensive patching on that to try and, you see those mole hills, we call them, that develop, especially in the time of season that we're at right now with the freeze thaw. They seem worse now, and maybe they'll settle back down. But Springfield Hill at the bottom of the hill, and Highview Hill, and Centennial Hill, and Kerfoot, all hills, they tend to deteriorate twice as fast as something on the flat.
Does the traffic, ICC has intense traffic, does that make a difference?
I think it makes a difference because if you, I think that if they're going over a bump and then they start to continue to beat down on that
Once it
and
starts
it's already
deteriorating.
loose, I think it's going to make it looser.
Thanks.
I'll tell you what, Mayor, I appreciate you bringing up that road specifically. That's probably the one that maybe we all receive the most complaints on, and due in large part to the enormous number of people that live in that area. The question is, how do we fix it? It's concrete, so we can't do the scarification process that we are able to do in other areas. So the thought is, well, we shouldn't use concrete. However, I don't know how old that road is now. It's 40 years old or, I mean, it's,
I would say.
and for it to last as long as it has, and it's at the point where we need to replace it, but I think we've gotten some good life out of it.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with you.
yeah, so the question is, obviously, we have to do something about it. And then, do we do it with concrete again? Do we do it maybe a less expensive way with asphalt? But it's just a question that we're gonna have to look at.
We know that we overlaid that in 2008, and we're exactly 10 years
Yeah.
away.
Centennial.
That's interesting.
Centennial.
Centennial.
Springfield Road was widened from the narrow original two-lane, I mean, it's still two-lane, but the curb and gutter were added, I think, in the mid-'60s. Early '60s, I would guess, 64, 65 in there. So it's had about a 50-year life
Yeah,
or so. And it was asphalt from day one.
yeah.
Now, Highview, you're thinking, Patrick, that it's beyond just cutting out the seams and repouring and, like you see, some rehab on the concrete streets?
Once you run those numbers and you actually look at cutting out where those patches are, and then overlaying it, because if you patch the road, you're going to have not one seam anymore, you're going to have two seams.
Correct.
And you continuously need to maintain that. So the question remains is, how much are we going to put into that? And then to eventually overlay it, or should we just draw it back and just remove and totally reconstruct that? Because you're going, in places on Highview, you're going to have a patch after patch after patch.
Agreed.
So just to classify the bad, average, and good, we did have these pictures here. This is Sanford, and we classified that as a bad street. Now, that is probably one of the worst streets in.
I was going to say, based on the picture, how would you think that?
You know, something about Sanford, and I did not realize this until speaking with Pat a couple weeks ago. What is it underneath this surface?
Steam tunnels.
Steam tunnels from Caterpillar, we believe, are there. So I'll let him speak to how we would fix that, whether we should fix that. I mean, what are the issues, Pat, what you told me?
Yeah, so when Rick and I had spoken with Caterpillar a number of years ago, and one of the things that they wanted to actually maintain those. They wanted to keep those functional. So if we ended up patching through there, there are some pretty good depressions there. So there's something going on underneath those where there's some type of cavity or that steam tunnel has actually collapsed. So that would have to be fixed. Two, if we ended up patching enough that we could overlay over top that, they would want to raise those up, which would be an expense in itself. Every time you have an underground utility, especially something as old as those probably are, you're going to have some issues.
Do you think that's the problem? I think it's, is it Cass and Center, where you round that bend, there's a huge dip in the road. Do you know what I'm referring to?
There's one right at Sanford and Edmond.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
At Casson Center, I've spoken with Rick about that.
I mean, it's pretty
Yeah, I don't know
good.
if that
It's been a
one,
while though.
It's pretty
so
good
I
dip
can't
in the
remember what
road,
he
right
said.
when you go around the corner.
I know which one you're
Yeah.
talking about too.
Yeah, I
I think
don't-
there's a manhole really
yeah, I don't
close
know
to
if
that.
that's I don't know if that's a steam, one of the steam lines or not. I don't think it is.
When
I believe it's
spoke
one
with
of our
you-
wastewater
Yeah, I think
manholes
it's
is what it is. And I know we had it on the list last year. We were looking at rehabbing the inside, pulling the pavement up and maybe doing something to try to rehab the outside because we believe there's enough depression is holding the water. Water's going down and dropping infiltration into the manhole. So ultimately, we're undermining our own roadway with the leakage that's getting into the manhole. So
Well,
it's
that
one of
one's-
those that was on
that
our
one gives
hot
me a
list
lot of
last year,
concern.
but we haven't.
Look at that traffic
gotten
that
there.
cuts around there, that one's,
Yeah, it's
a little
definitely
nervous.
needed repair.
yeah, I was just curious.
This last slide is something we put together based on dollars that we see as needs. We know from our inventory of drainage, and we could probably spend $1 million a year in drainage, just the outfalls themselves. I know Rick and I could go out and find 20 places where there's a culvert, and the culvert has a rusted bottom through it, and there's a 20-foot drop right below the culvert, where there's needs to have riprap. And the only thing it does is it continues to eat out and make that hole deeper. There's one up off Illini Drive, right around the curve. And that's a very, very deep pipe. But what's happening, reflecting through, is what we see is the roadway above is actually dipping. So if you go by there during a rainfall event and look to your right-hand side, you'll see that water is sitting there, lining that pipe, and then addressing the concern at the outfall. And again, we live in a city with many, many ravines, and that's what we're faced with, so.
Did the Fond du Lac Drive improvements work as far as the erosion there?
I believe we had a pretty good success with that. Also with, we had some FEMA grant money a number of years ago, after the big rainfall event, I think of 2013, and that seemed to help out a lot. We would never have made it that far, I don't think, without the help of those projects. I know Rick can speak about this, but we talked about, there's another 4.5 million in bridges that he's going to have coming up before too long. And then and another 1.2 probably in traffic signals. But if we were going to take, right now, if we took our, the 3 and below rating streets, we probably have 1.5 million just in rating those streets. And if you remember what the 3 look like. If we went up to the 4, in the 3 range streets, I think we have like 35 streets or something like that. And when we go up into the 4 range, we're like 150. So we come up, and then we couple that with our major roadways that we actually have to either reconstruct or overlay. There's an easy $40 million out there. It's going to have to be addressed at some point. It's a matter of what the city, and we've always talked about this, what is an acceptable level of streets that the city would like to see at a condition rating for their streets.
Where do you put your money? Do you put it into a 3 so it doesn't deter anymore? Or do you go with the most severely impaired?
I would say that the most popular answer to that question is you put it into the short term. Because the amount of money, 3 times the amount, is just taking away so much. And you hope that you can have some mild winters that might prolong it more. Mm-hmm. You hope that things will fall into place, and you hope that maybe there's going to be extra funding out there at some level, some type of stimulus plan, some federal or state funding that might help out with those situations. I know, again, Rick and now Dennis, we're into that situation where we're deeply entwined in PUATs, and there's money that becomes available, and we're constantly, the 3 of us are constantly looking at that and trying to find opportunities where we can get some of that money paid for. And I know you've got projects right now that are going on in that.
PUATs is one of those things where sometimes it hurts when we spend the money, Summit, for example. It hurt when we spent the money for that road through PUAT, but the return was enormous. We gained a lot more than what we put out for it. When one of our projects is picked up with PUAT's funds, we pay a fraction of it. So it's not always it's not always easy to take on those projects at the time, but that's why we plan so far out in advance. Pat, how far out right now is PUAT's planning?
I think it's 21 or 22.
They're 21 now, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we even want to consider a PUAT's, for instance, and we've had this conversation, I don't believe Highview would be subject to PUATs. I don't think what's it considered, or supposed to be considered to be?
An FAU route, a federally aid urban route, and it is eligible, Highview. that section is
It
eligible.
actually competed twice now. It's just it gets beat out on criteria, and it doesn't have all the criteria that a lot of the other jobs come up with.
When we first started looking at it, that was the hope, that we could get it into a PUAT's plan, and then maybe look at widening by Armstrong School, the possibility of sidewalks, or making it safer, because if kids are walking to school, or anybody running or riding their bike on that road, it's very dangerous. So when I first started, and we were talking about the road back then, and we were looking at the hope of PUATs, but every year we look at trying to add that in. Let's say they accepted it this next year. Well, we're looking out 21, 22, who knows? And each year that we try for it and we miss out, then it's another year farther. So unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where I personally have kind of, I don't want to say given up. I mean, if they told us today that it would be funded, then we would try to figure out a way so we can use those funds for it. But I just don't see it happening. In central Illinois, there are many road route needs, and that one, as Rick said, has been beaten by other things.
We have funding coming for the roundabout, though.
We do, and that's something that I think will be great for that area. And we are going to pay a fraction of the overall cost, and especially for Embassy Suites and that intersection there where it gets backed up and people illegally turn left because it feels like they should. And I think it will take away a lot of the problems that are there. So I'm really eager to see that come to fruition. I've spoken with a couple, the people that work at some of those businesses there. They are excited about it. And I mean, I just can't really wait to see it there.
We had to fight for that funding, too.
Good
Yes.
question, Patrick. When you mentioned priorities, are you stating, let me just let you see if this is what I heard, that we go after our major roads? Or like what you would consider maybe the snow route, those artery roads, then put the money there? I mean, I guess all streets are different. They have different speed limits, different volume of traffic, more wear and tear, et cetera, versus my residential, which is low speed, low volume, and, can handle, it doesn't have large truck traffic, et cetera, on it for the most part. So do we concentrate on those artery routes?
I think you have to have two parallel tracks. One addressing your major roadways, but also addressing those residential streets
Yeah.
at the same time. Notre Dame is one that sticks in my mind, okay? Notre Dame has a high water, that whole area up there has a high water table. Same thing, similar to what we had when the blowups happened in the Liberty Village area. The blacktop, the roadway is in such small pieces that any amount of freeze and thaw, and it's just, I took pictures of it this year because I'm like, this is going to blow. But it's been like that for 2 or 3 years.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle, right, just to,
Yes.
Commissioner,
support.
another thing to think about with that, we had this talk a couple weeks ago when we spoke, and not just the either major or I guess minor neighborhood roads. We have some roads as well. Just one, for instance, the road that leads to the auto mall, or that is so important to the city. It services many businesses down there, not just the dealership, but it services many businesses that provide a lot of not only sales tax revenue, but also income from their property taxes. So if you drive on their road right now, if I were them, I'd be frustrated, and as you all know.
They are.
They probably are. And that's something that we have to take into account as well. We want to make sure that we keep our businesses happy, and we have to keep our residents happy as well. Some have stated that, well, should we be looking at assessments, special assessments for some of these roads that service only businesses? That's not something that the city's ever, I guess, taken advantage of. And I don't have an opinion about that right now. It's nothing that we've done in the past. And I think, well, I'm saying we
did it,
not done it.
Jonas.
It's just we don't make a routine practice of it. I have a couple other things. Besides our street maintenance dollars, and I bring all these things up, and I do have to stick up for my colleagues on the council, that I don't think anybody up here would withhold funds from the roads. I think everybody would like to spend more dollars on our streets. But besides the maintenance dollars that we have spent, and we have this graph here, it looks like this, that Pat showed a few minutes ago, that shows the different fundings that we have put out there. We've also taken on some other pretty big development type projects as well. I mentioned Summit a few minutes ago. Centennial Drive, how many phases, 4 phases or so to that?
Six phases.
Six phases. That we had to pick up a lot of that expense. Pick up a lot of the expense, but also some of the expense was picked up by others. We have these development type projects of in Camp Street and that we've really put a lot of money into our community in roads. This slide doesn't do it justice to say how much money we've put into our streets over the last 10 to 12 years. Having said that, the last couple of years we haven't had as many development type projects, and we haven't had as much in the way of maintenance dollars either. So we all hear complaints sometimes, and I commend Pat and commend Rick for putting their heads together to figure out how to stretch our dollars as well as they have been able to. When I was first elected to council, they had a meeting with me, and they told me that before that they often would allow a road to get to the point of needing to be completely replaced, and they wanted to do more and more maintenance as time went on. And not only I, but everybody on the council was favorable toward that, just trying to figure out, how far can we stretch our dollars. So we're at this point now. I think last year we spent, I don't know, $400,000 on street maintenance. We did do the large project a few years ago, but we want to try to get up to, I just throw out a number, at least $1 million a year, and frankly, we would be much better off. Pat, when I first started, said, I think he said, if we could start at $2.5 million a year and then increase by 3 or 5% a year after that, that's the plan that we should try to be on. The way that things have been with gaming revenue declining and everything, that's been tough to maintain. We have done a good job in some years spending close to $2 million, but it's been difficult during these last few years. As much as we have looked over the last few months at cutting expenses in our department, even if we continue to cut another $1-2 million a year throughout our various departments, I could soak that up tomorrow in street issues, drainage issues, bridge issues. So as much money as we can save in one place, I have needs for them in the street department. So obviously we'll talk about revenue at a different point, but it leads me back to that. I think we should still continue to look at places to cut, but it just kind of adds to my concern about the roads, that we need more revenue so we can spend more money on our streets.
Just a comment of, I guess, one of the pluses over the last few years, as far as the budget history, that shows the dollars that were spent, but there's been a productivity increase in the type of road that we've been, I say we, that Patrick and Rick and the department has come up with, like heat scarification with the additional oil on top, et cetera. The cost of that, Patrick, versus overlay is what, less than half or?
Yep, less than half.
So that technology, or that, it was just easier to overlay it back 20 years ago, or that, when I say easier, that was the mode of operation then. Now, because of less dollars, there has the different chemical and EPA regulations has taken away some of the options that were back before. So the ultraviolet light, et cetera, breaks down the components more quickly and all that, and you're the one that's the expert on.
That's a good point, Commissioner. But Patrick, is it true that roads today may not last as long as roads did? Because I've heard this. I've never asked you that specifically. Is that true?
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think it's autumn, West Autumn up there, probably done in the 60s. It was, if you look at it, it's a bigger rock, and it's really stable still to this day. And I look at something like Highview, the curved part of Highview, done in 2009, and it's more brittle, and I would beg to say that if you compare that to the West Autumn, done in the 60s, the amount of cracks and deterioration is almost the same.
I was told once by a contractor in the area that a lot of the reason for that is some of the, I don't know, rules or parameters put on what we can use in our tar and what kind of binds our roads together. For the purpose of trying to be better to our environment, our roads have become, as Pat said, a little bit more brittle. And that was said to me by one of the kind of well-known street people in the area.
Kind of following on to that, there's a lot of history. If you look at the oil industry, we've gotten much better at refining every barrel of oil for gasoline, so they don't produce as much tar oil that goes into asphalt, and it's a lower quality because they're refining it more and more with the new modern methods to help kind of accentuate what you're talking about. So that side of things is really taken away from some of the base oils that were in the older asphalt.
And it's interesting too that some people, when they talk about their road, it's not just about the smoothness. The color will change over a couple of years, and if an area was patched, it may have a different look to it, but it still might be just
Like
as
a quilt.
smooth. Well, to the customer, to the resident, that's a problem because it's a visual impairment. Even though driving down the road, they may feel nothing at all. But I mean, so in public works, we fix it. It might feel perfectly smooth, but to the public, that's not always acceptable. So it's something that we've had to look at as well.
Cosmetic.
Yes.
What else, Patrick?
The last set of slides I have here is some of the streets from January of this year. So some of our worst rated streets, those 3 rated streets I talked about. This is Holly Drive up in the Sunnyland area. Star Court, Sunnyland area. That was Lawrence Street, Lawrence Street is actually rated higher than a 3. But I took a picture of this area just because there are sections of, this is closer to Route 8, that are actually in pretty bad condition. But overall, the street was rated at, I believe, a 4. Tall Oaks, another area. Grange Road. You can see, this has a lot to do with this overhanging tree, which is a problem. You see this all the time. That will deteriorate first, fastest. Just because it stays shaded longer, it doesn't dry out enough. It will, and then you end up with patch upon patch upon patch.
And Grange may now be getting more traffic because of the work we've done on Summit.
Grossenbach Road, again, numerous patches upon patches. Access Road 6 down by Leeway. The guys have done a tremendous job of pouring spray patching into that area, and I guarantee you this would look a lot worse if they hadn't done what they did. Fairlane, this section is probably the worst section of Fairlane, but again, we talked about the number of patches, and where do you stop and start here? You would, in this section, you'd basically have to take out whole sections of this roadway rather than going in and patching those individual patches. Quiet Creek, Notre Dame, this was the one I was talking about earlier. See how small those pieces of roadway are, and just how I think that they're going to, it is a matter of time before that blows up.
We're afraid that one of these springs, that's going to become a major issue.
Mariners Way. Again, that section in front, closest to the highway, gets a lot of traffic with the gas station and Jonah's and the entrance to the condos. And then that may have to actually be something different than our heat scarification and seal coat. We may have to actually overlay that just because it gets so much traffic. There's a threshold in that heat scarification and seal coat we haven't found yet, but we think it's around 5,000 cars per day, that we're a little leery about going over that, using something like that on Springfield Road, for
There's
example.
just a lot of turning movement there too.
Yep. Access Road 3, going back to the Burger Barge, we have that front portion of that. Winter's Way, again, we got a concrete street with patches that need to happen, because every time we have rain or freeze thaw, that water can get down in there and start breaking that up even more.
We did Blackjack a few years ago, if you remember that.
Ravine Street, again, one of our worst streets. Taylor Road, Par 3 Lane, Field Avenue. We've done most of the area in the Shadowway area. We actually had we were investigating a sinkhole right here, and the guys found a tree stump, an old tree stump that was causing this sinkhole. Lilac, again, one of our worst streets, and looking at this area, you can see the number of patches, and then when you get close, just how many patches. The guys have just tried to hold it together with cold patch or spray patch or whatever the case may be. Springfield Road, this is out near the edge of town. Pinecrest, we've talked before about Pinecrest with the, if you've ever ridden it, you can feel that wave that on the concrete. But
Ask Commissioner Decker what it's like to ride in a fire engine.
Yeah, it'll throw you through the ceiling.
And we still have this blacktop portion in between that still needs to be maintained. And you can see right here, that's gonna have to be patched. Harvey Court is another one. Mostly businesses, I think there's one house back there.
There is.
But again, where do we stop? Where do we stop with the patching? And there's whole sections of that roadway that are gonna have to be removed and replaced. Julian is another one. That's a major connector to all those side streets. But the asphalt, whenever it was built, it's pretty thin. We're probably gonna have to, we actually heat scarified and seal code that a number of years ago, but it's to the point that it's so thin, we have to probably till that up and overlay it.
Rick pointed out to me that one, you can see where, like, years of plowing since scarification has caused, I mean, it was scarified a while ago, but it's gotten to the point, in our plowing practices will add to that part of our destruction of the road.
And a lot of this lighter colored rock, that's all spray patching that again, the guys have been trying to hold together. Farmdale Road's another one that a number of years ago, we actually, that was on the fringe, I think, of whether we should or should not crack seal that. I can guarantee you that if we didn't crack seal that, it would be in a lot worse shape than it is today. But we still have major issues that are gonna have to be addressed. This is Carver. We have a big drainage problem back here, but again, the number of spray patching that's happened over the years. This is the Philippi parking lot. This is the section of the test section that I've talked about before. But this section right here, I think it's a matter of time again before that blows up. Public Works parking lot in itself, again, you see the smallness of the parts of the roadway in Philippi's Way. This is West Washington, over by Hardee's. And West Washington towards the overpass. This was another local agency that didn't use the GSB. And again, you can see this riff of rock with seal coating, and you can really see it here, but you really get a feel for it when you actually are outside walking on that, and the amount of loose rock. You can see it here. And what we have on Rustic, we have minimal, in my opinion, minimal loose rock, and much less than what we had before. And again, when you actually are walking on that roadway, it's much different than the other municipality that did not use the GSB.
And that adds that extra 10% to the cost of the road.
Yep. And that's it.
Very good, very enlightening. Other concerns, questions from the council?
No, the only thing I would ask, can you send that presentation to us so we can study some of the
Yep.
information that you.
It was the best you ever given, honestly.
Thank you.
I mean, they're all good, but that one was better. Anybody in the audience want to speak to the council regarding anything in the working session? Come forward. Seeing no one come forward, is there a motion to adjourn the working session, please?
So moved.
Commissioner Call, second. Commissioner
Second.
Decker. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Dunsberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Beasley?
Aye.
All those in favor, aye, Your Honor.
Be back in about 7 minutes. That's a good presentation.
Make it for me,
Good
sorry,
job, Danny.
Because I didn't know if I'd be able to see it, so that's perfect. Thank you.
We ready? We'll call this meeting to order, please. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Here.
Densberger?
Here.
Jeffers?
Here.
Hall?
Here.
Mayor Mingus?
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please stand for the invocation. Remain standing for the pledge.
Shall I pray? Heavenly Father, thank you for watching over us this past week. We thank you for the snow we had. Thank you that it was able to be removed and pretty much a non-issue for us at this point. And we anticipate another dusting tonight. Pray for safety as our workers are out and making things safe for our folks in the morning and the police and fire as well as they watch over us as we sleep. May we not take these services or this freedom for granted. May we work to and be with us as we work to go over the agenda tonight, the things that were before us. May we do the best we can with what we have before us. And we ask your blessing. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on January 16, 2018, and the minutes of the special meetings for working sessions held on January 16, 2018, January 23, 2018, and January 30, 2018 be approved as printed.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Decker, discussion, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Hall?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present, voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Communications, Madam Clerk.
I have no communications tonight, Your Honor.
Anybody in the audience want to speak to the council on an agenda item, come forward. Jeff, please come forward.
Good evening, Jeff Gablehausen. I'll save both of my comments for afterwards, but on the agenda, you have paying the bills, $1,409,000. Consent agenda item, pretty typical. Reading the paper, and I assume it was accurate, $500,000 to $700,000, budget gap for next year. So I ask you, out of this $1,409,000, could you not find $22,000 that wasn't necessary? Think about that. Here's the list, here's the stack. I went through and highlighted several that I have questions on. So if you could take $20,000 to $22,000 out of each of the 26 pay periods, you would have closed your budget gap. Back in September, I gave you a list of ideas to close budget gaps. I got no response from anyone. We'll talk more about that later. But you come back and you talk about fee increases, tax increases. So $22,000. Ask yourselves, why do you buy business cards from a company in North Peoria? It's not a lot of money. It's $69. I just bought business cards last week from Speedy Printing in East Peoria. I paid $18. Not a big number. Raises the question, why? Why do you buy ice melt from a business in Peoria? Why not buy it from a business in East Peoria? There's so many things here. And I wonder, did you really read any of these? Happy vote.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, we have a consent agenda I believe everybody's in agreement with. I'll turn over to you, Commissioner Densberger.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a consent agenda consisting of items numbered 1 through 7 as listed on the agenda for this meeting to be considered by omnibus vote.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call, discussion, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Hall?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present, voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Then, Your Honor, I move you that the items numbered 1 through 7 listed on the consent agenda be hereby approved and adopted. The items numbered 2 through 7, having been read once by their title and having laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection, be adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call, discussion, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Hall?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present, voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, continuing on, Your Honor, I have Resolution 1718-104. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that Resolution Number 1718-104 hereto attached, a resolution to approve abating and eliminating various tax levies for water and sewer bond issues tax increment financing bond issues and development bond issues be approved, and that this resolution number 1718-104 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title, be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is an annual event, thankfully. These are various bonds that were sold to be supported by tax revenue if necessary. Thankfully, they don't have to be. They're covered mostly by water and sewer bills.
Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Next, Your Honor. Mr. Mayor, I move you that ordinance number 4371 here to attached, an ordinance amending Title III, Chapter 3 of the East Peoria, Illinois City Code Liquor Control Regulations to change the provisions regarding curbside service and liquor license renewals, be accepted on its first reading as read by its title, and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Jeffers.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is an update to the code. As everyone is aware, one of the newer trends in shopping is order ahead, place your order, and the store will bring it to you curbside, and you just pick it up. Well, that's great service, which is why we're updating this, but particularly if there's liquor involved, that's not allowed by our code. So by updating this, it allows that service, no drive-throughs, but it does allow for someone to include liquor in that order and just the pickup itself to take place.
And it's specific to square footage, is it not?
Yes, it's a 50,000 square foot minimum.
Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And looks like I'm reading one at length. Whereas EP Downtown LLC, the owner of the following parcel numbers, 01-01-32-205-010, 01-01-32-205-013, and 01-01-32-205-016, the property, has filed a complaint with the Tazewell County Board of Review for the purpose of challenging the assessed value assigned to the property for tax year 2016, and whereas the owner of the property has appealed the decision to the Board of Review to the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, and whereas it is in the best interest of the city to intervene in the proceedings related to the property currently pending before the PTAB, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, that the city attorney is hereby authorized and directed to petition for leave to intervene in the proceedings involving the assessment of the property, which proceedings are identified by the following case numbers currently pending before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board. 2016-00373, 2016-00349, and 2016-00350. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, I move you that resolution number 1718-098 be adopted as presented.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call.
Thank you, Commissioner. As stated, this gives the city attorney's office leave to intervene and in these cases before the PTAB. We did, of course, prevail on the local level at the county, and now it's kicked up to the state level.
Other discussion, please. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Next, Your Honor, resolution number 1718-107, be it resolved by the council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that resolution number 1718-107, here to attach to resolution approving the East Peoria Four Corners Parking and Traffic Study be approved, and that this resolution, number 1718-107, be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Jeffers?
Thank you, Commissioner. Ty, would you care to elaborate for us?
Sure thing. So this is the four-corner study that was conducted over the course of the first part of 2017, and then in August, we presented in front of the City Council and talked about some of the findings. The adoption of the ordinance here, I want to make sure it's very clear that this is saying, here's a plan moving forward. Obviously, there's more review and inspection that has to occur as far as looking at specific projects, but some of the key points that came out of this are a proposed roundabout at Springfield and Washington. This one was very supported by our group of business and property owners. In fact, tonight, Patrick Meyer in his presentation showed a stretch of West Washington between Main Street and the railroad tracks. This is certainly an area that needs attention. And maybe as a part of that whole process, not only we look at overlaying the street, but also reconfiguring the lanes that are there as well, too, to improve traffic flow, improve pedestrian safety. So this plan really just says, go forward and pursue opportunities for additional funding, whether it be for further engineering work or ultimately construction. But by providing this adoption of this plan, it gives us that opportunity to pursue those options.
Thank you.
Just me personally, I have a couple issues with this study as I see it. First of all, I see they're calling for a roundabout or recommending a roundabout at the bottom of Springfield Road in Washington. Now, I'm not exactly sold on the roundabout in these heavy traffic areas. I understand the concept, from a low impact, keeping the flow going, but can't help but to think about the festival and the amount of traffic down there. So when you go from an intersection where people are forced to stop, as you know, a lot of times there's people stuck out in the intersection, and you have to wait. That's frustrating. Now, what's going to happen when that whole thing gets boggled up, when somebody says, hey, I don't have to stop? I mean, I just...
It's a very good question, and it'd be something we'll have to look in.
Just
and we'll look at the
something
engineering
personally
of it.
I struggle with.
Sure.
Couple other things that I guess I have questions on because it's not very clear. In reading exactly what's all entailed, to free up some additional parking spaces and kind of narrow Washington right in front of the four corners there where it goes to basically 2 lanes and then a 2-way lane in the middle, so 3 lanes in a
Right.
sense. Cutting into that public parking space looks like that is also part of the plan, right in front of like Little Grocer and all that.
So one of the concepts proposed had an increase in the size of the public parking lot that's there. And in that increase into that size, what you'd do is you'd put traffic flow that would go essentially in front of that Little Grocery. And potentially you may relocate a business there as well, too. So it's very conceptual. It's something that certainly
And I
not all
get
of
it,
this was
aid for
left.
effort. I just have a lot of concerns
Yeah.
with what I read in here. The other question I have, they're going to take the existing signal, it looks like the intersection where Mall Road comes out. In other words, you have Kroger on this side and right by Whitey's, and then move that intersection down right where the church is at Almiron, is that how you say it?
Almiron, yeah.
Almiron. It says in here that they're going to make a new public street that would be a direct route to Springfield Road. Help me understand that one. Because Washington curves around now from that intersection and goes to Springfield Road.
Correct.
I mean, I'm just,
No, that's a good question. So they're talking about a direct route to Springfield Road?
yeah, it literally, in Midwest Engineer, in the study itself, says the new street would require crossing over Coal Creek, which it would. The new public street would provide a direct route.
Oh. So one of the concepts that was discussed, and this is something that obviously requires a lot more engineering review, would be to take, this would actually be the intersection where Cole comes in. You'd extend Cole straight over to Springfield Extension. So you're taking it due north. So it improves some connectivity there, but you're also essentially placing an intersection over the top of where McKinley would have crossed there across the viaduct. So it's conceptual at this point.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
get it.
looking
I
at
just have
opportunities to
some
maximize
concerns
that
personally.
traffic flow.
We had the working session, it's been several months ago, but the concept was to move traffic away from the four corners. You know, for instance, when you're coming from the interstate on Washington, then turn on the Springfield extension to take you over to.
Correct.
I mean, that was in one of the original concepts to do that, and then I guess
And
you
that's
also.
the idea of that roundabout, to kind of push more
And that would be just a
traffic on the Springfield
constant right
station.
turn, nonstop, just a constant right turn onto that and really help traffic go that way. And what we're doing, or what the study is after, to show how we could slow down things from the four corners, make for easier on-street parking or parking and shopping. And it's, the concept, I guess, is what we've been trying to illustrate. But you still have Kroger and everything else going on down there, so it's still busy, but it's not maybe quite as busy to divert some of that traffic away.
You're correct, Commissioner. That's a good part of the purpose of this, is to divert traffic that would now, that would utilize the Springfield extension to keep it out of the four
I
corners.
wouldn't call it a
area
bypass, but it
routed.
really is, and anybody wants to get around town, you can do that now, but for us to put out-of-towners that way, all the state routes and US routes that we have coming through downtown, you know, US 24 is now here, et cetera. It's such a busy place, and truck traffic and everything else, so it's a way to help out our, maybe you call them smaller businesses, or just the old downtown area.
Yeah, and there's a balance to be struck here. I mean, the objective isn't, we want everybody to bypass this area. Those who want to come here, we want to make it inviting and as attractive, so opportunities to park, that traffic flow that's calmed, but those that are just traveling through, we want to give them the opportunity to go around this area as well, too, because we know that some of the proposed changes in here could lead to some congestion at Main and
Yeah, I mean, the
Washington.
old days of shift change, you know, Caterpillar especially, I mean, it is what it is, or is what it was. It's such a busy place, and it hasn't changed much in the last 20, 30 years either,
Yeah,
40 years.
As Ty said, this is simply the first step by adopting the study. The information is out there. Then as funding would come available, additional work could be done to further vet the ideas.
I wanted to say as well, and my understanding is tonight we are accepting a concept, not necessarily a concrete plan. And the overall concept of it is to try to create something that allows people to get out of their vehicles, bring them downtown if possible, provide more parking, and I agree with all that. I do have some concerns as well. There's one business owner that brought up a concern with me, but as far as the overall thought, the concept of trying to get people downtown, I'm certainly supportive of. I echo some of the concerns, and I just wanted to make sure we'll have plenty of opportunity
Yes.
later on with each step to approve or disapprove of, correct?
Right.
Yes.
I will save some of my comments for results of the study. Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
No.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
4 ayes and 1 no, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Next, Your Honor, Resolution Number 1718-105. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that Resolution Number 1718-105, hereto attached, a resolution approving an agreement with Midwest Engineering Associates for completion of an engineering analysis of the intersection of Camp Street and Riverside Drive at a cost not to exceed $15,000 be approved, and that this resolution number 1718-105 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call.
Thank you, Commissioner. This has been a long contemplated project that I believe it involves IDOT. Ty, would you go ahead and elaborate for me?
Sure. So the intersection, and we talked earlier tonight about different road projects that are being funded through PUATs. This is the second one. The first intersection, obviously, is Camp and River with the roundabout. This is Camp at Riverside. And one of the early precursor items that need to be done is this intersection design study. The other benefit that we have to doing this at this time is we have some pending property that's adjacent here that we've been working with IDOT for a jurisdictional transfer for 10 years now. It's really kind of hung out there, and they have indicated that this is a necessary step in that process as well, too. So we're getting two birds with one stone here.
Thank you. Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And finally, Your Honor, Resolution Number 1718-102. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that Resolution Number 1718-102 hereto attached, a resolution approving a Microsoft licensing subscription renewal for the city from PTC Select at a cost of $32,468.25 be approved, and that this resolution number 1718-102 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Call?
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, budgeted item. We've got a bunch of PCs and laptops, and we have to pay for the licenses for the software that makes them run.
Yeah, actually, just a real quick point. This is part of a 3-year license term. We actually had approved this through a bidding process. These folks won the bid, so we have to do this annually through the term, which runs through March of 2020.
Thank you for mentioning that. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Densberger. Commissioner Decker?
Mayor, I have nothing right now.
Commissioner Jeffers?
One item at this time, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that Resolution Number 1718-099, hereto attached, a resolution authorizing the payment of an invoice from Hair Construction, Inc. in the amount of $17,792.50 for the cleaning and televising of various 8-inch sewer mains throughout the City of East Peoria be approved, and that this resolution number 1718-099 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Densberger?
Thank you, Commissioner Densberger. While the city, while our department of wastewater televises, has a camera, et cetera, and does televising of our wastewater lines, occasionally we need the services, in this case by Hair Construction. Dennis, we work together with them to make this happen. Any comments or?
The biggest comment to understand here is we had to utilize an easement machine to be able to get into some of these rear alleys, gullyways that we can't otherwise get our equipment into, and it's a machine that we don't have. So we had to work together with Hair Construction to be able to keep those main feeders clean, to be able to continue to feed the wastewater down to the appropriate plants, so.
Okay. Some discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Jeffers. Commissioner Call?
I have 3 items this evening, sir. First item is resolution number 1718-097. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, the resolution number 1718-097, hereto attached, a resolution authorizing acceptance of the proposal for the repair of fire apparatus truck 1, engine from Altorfer, Inc., in the amount of $15,810 be approved, and that this resolution number 1718-097 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Excuse me.
Second.
Commissioner Densberger?
Thank you, Commissioner Densberger. So this is our ladder truck, and as many are aware, I think I've already kind of spoken to this in the past. Unfortunately, it went out of service the day of the Uftring fire in Washington, and they sought our help with the ladder truck, and unfortunately, we couldn't back them up with that. Coincidentally, theirs is out of service, as we found out when we had the apartment complex fire. We were both out of it. So this is a necessary repair. The reason why it's $15,810 is the labor, honestly, is the largest part. The gasket that's leaking the oil is in the front of the engine, and it's a fixed cab, so the entire thing has to be removed. We did look at possibly doing it in-house. It wasn't an option for us, so It's one of those necessary things that we have to do.
Any discussion? Roll call, or excuse me. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Hall?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Next, Your Honor, Resolution Number 1718-100. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that Resolution Number 1718-100, hereto attached, a resolution authorizing acceptance of the proposal for repair and replacement of the trench drain in the engine bay at Firehouse Number 4, from Illinois Civil Contractors, Inc., in the amount of $18,816 be approved, and that this resolution number 1718-100 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second?
Commissioner Jeffers.
Thank you, Commissioner Jeffers. So for this particular item,
Thank you.
we sought bids and we received 2 bids back, one from Illinois Civil Contractors in the amount of $18,816, and the other from another local company, C&G Concrete, and that one was $25,000. So, Chief, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, this is kind of a safety issue, as Commissioner Decker to attest to. One of our firemen actually tripped over this. There's several areas where the drain is deteriorated, the concrete, where it won't hold them in place any longer. Robert did quite a good job on some due diligence. We originally looked to try and maybe just patch it, but after talking with him, if we're going to do it, we should just do it right. They're going to actually cut the concrete out, reset it, all new drain tile and everything, new grate system, so we won't have to worry about it. So I'm kind of glad that it's going to be over with, which was actually brought to our attention in August. It's just been a matter of not being able to get somebody to give us a bid and then get it done correctly the way that Robert wanted it done. So we're finally getting it taken care of. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Chief.
Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Lastly, Resolution Number 1718-103. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that Resolution Number 1718-103, hereto attached, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the City of East Peoria, the City of Pekin, the City of Washington, the Village of Morton, Tazewell County, and the Tazewell County Emergency Telephone System Board regarding advanced funding to the Tazewell County Consolidated Communication, TC3, be approved, and this resolution number 1718-103 be accepted on its first reading as read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. So this relates to TC3, as everyone's aware. I think we brought this topic up back when we had the original intergovernmental agreement. State mandates that we consolidate our dispatch centers here in Tazewell County. We currently have 4. We're consolidating down to 2. Presented a plan to the state, which was recently approved within the last week or so. This new governance board, TC3, it's a separate entity, all of its own. There's a governance board, which City Administrator Eder and myself serve on. And then we also have an operations committee as part of this organization. To implement the plan, you got to have funds. So as we found out in our first meeting, there were no funds to get anything jump-started. So we basically had to go back to the signatories of the original agreement. As it stands now, each agency that is represented in this new entity for these services will be billed here very shortly, in a matter of months, if not sooner, from TC3 to get this thing jump-started. We'll have a budget in place. We have a meeting coming up February 16th where a lot more decisions have to be made to move this thing forward. But at the end of the day, we had to have a starting fund. So basically is what this does. We've gone back to these different agencies, including East Peoria, and this $25,000 is nothing more than an advancement of what we're going to be billed. So this will come off what we will owe down the road, once this thing gets started, so.
Thank you. Other discussion?
And there's still, Commissioner, no knowledge at all about what the total bill will ultimately be for us, correct?
For East Peoria?
Yes.
So the original thought process, and I know it's painful for everybody, quite honestly, this is unfunded. Nobody's too pleased to be where we're at today, but we have no choice. It's going to be based off a percentage of calls for service. So we'll have a budget here hopefully within the next month or so.
Okay.
There was, in the original agreement, there was an estimate.
A funding formula.
Formula
Right.
in there that specified what the initial payments would be, and I don't remember that off the top of my head, but it had, percentage of the calls from police and fire.
For police and fire, yeah.
So, and a funding formula.
I was thinking, isn't there also additional, like, startup money, or am I thinking of that incorrectly?
This is going to be our startup money.
This is it? Okay.
There was no startup money,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I think, this was kind of a surprise to the group, and, there's a lot of work to be done. The question is, will this be enough money to get it started, or will we be back asking for more? At this point in time, I don't know. There's lots of decisions to be made, and you've got a number of communities involved in this, so
Yeah,
we'll work
and
together to get it done.
Like I said, it's going to be a painful process. The thought process behind the state mandate is, in the long term, it's eventually going to save everybody money having a consolidated center. That will yet to be determined. And I imagine that's quite a few years off, because there's some tremendous costs involved in doing this up front.
The state has an excellent history in that, too.
Oh, sure they did, yeah. But nonetheless, it's the right thing to do. I know the other parties, and I will point out, the ETSB, we were at their meeting, they approved their portion of the $25,000. That will not be refunded to them. They're not part of the funding formula. So that $25,000 was to help kickstart this. And some of their board members, quite honestly, weren't very supportive of that idea, because there's no means for them to be refunded, whereas we get it refunded down the road. So, but it's the right thing to do, and we're going to move this forward. These decisions should have been made already, quite honestly.
Thank you. Thanks for serving in that capacity. Jeff, you too. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Public comments from the audience. Please come forward. Come up, Jeff.
Guess it's my turn again. Guess I'll begin with a question. I assume that the article that was written January 30, 31, Scott, was pretty accurate depiction of the meeting? So that's all I have to go on. So I'm quoting the Journal Star, which from past experience, I know is a little bit dangerous. But based upon that, not me personally, I meant like in my previous lives. That being said, it appears the city's still looking at about a $500,000 budget deficit. It appears that what is now starting to get a consensus support of the council is a garbage tax. I want to call it a fee, I'll call it a tax. And a sales tax increase. Back in September, as I mentioned earlier, I sent out an email, gave a whole list of ideas to cut. Heard nothing back on any of that. Not that you owe me any type of response.
Let me say something. I did
Okay,
call
you're taking
you.
my time though, John.
Okay, but I did call you, so let's be.
Okay, no, I mean,
Keep going.
other than like
Keep
right
going.
then, we got
Okay.
some feedback. But I mean, since then, in terms of the action steps taken, okay? Even last week, I reached out and I asked some questions, filed it as a freedom of information request. City doesn't always have to wait 5 days. City doesn't always have to wait 5 days plus then ask for another 5 days to answer questions, but I've gotten no response. So I'm here, I guess, in lieu of getting responses. So all that being said, you're looking at a possible garbage tax increase. Do you understand when you do your annual tax levy and you guys struggle, and I mean that empathy, with a lot of empathy, it's tough. I mean, we don't want to increase somebody's property taxes 3%, 5%. You went through those. I've sat through those meetings. With a $180 garbage fee increase, let's pick a few houses just as an example. An actual home in Sunnyland. Don't know whose it is. I just grabbed them off the city's GIS. You're going to increase their city's Tax rate, 104.6%. Because last year they paid $172 in city services. Maybe that's not a lot, but you're increasing their city tax rate 104%. House in Pleasant Hill, you're increasing their taxes 73.5%. A house on Springfield Road, you're increasing their taxes 53.4%. Fortunately, there's somebody in Fond du Lac Heights, you're only increasing their tax 5.5%, so that's a good thing. Unfortunately, they pay $24,000 a year in property taxes, so not that much. Garbage fee, one of the most regressive taxes you can possibly consider. Then you're going to put it on the water bill, so people don't have any way to get around it. Tim, as a water commissioner, horrible idea. If I was a water commissioner, there's no way in hell I would allow that to happen. You're going to be held accountable for that. Dan, this is your tax. Garbage tax, your tax.
Jeff, you haven't asked if anybody's supportive of it.
I'm only telling you what the newspaper says. So I'm saying don't vote for it. If you need money, and I don't doubt, and I thought Pat Murphy did a great job tonight. I thought the street department, I thought he did a very good job. If you need money, make the tough cuts, then people will support a sales tax increase. You've not told us you've made the tough cuts. You're still allowing employees to drive cars home to Brimfield. You're still allowing a rampant use of credit cards. I'll say this. I would eliminate the city administrator's position. The city never had an administrator's position until fall of 1990. I would be dividing those duties across the finance director and the public works director. I'd even throw a little bit at the fire chief. I would not have a city administrator. I'd save $180,000. That's almost 40% of the $500,000 you're short. This is not that hard to do. Other people have done it. The easiest thing to do is vote in the tax increase. I promise you, if you do the garbage tax, it'll be the worst political decision ever. Enterprise fund. Mr. Norbert said to me tonight that he's for a garbage tax because it's an enterprise fund. That's what they teach at every city administrator, city manager conference out there. I'm dealing with cities all over. Enterprise fund, enterprise fund. Guess what happens once you institute an enterprise fund? Then the administrator always wants them in balance. How do you keep them in balance? You got to increase the fee. Because if you set it at $15 a month, those solid waste fees are going to go up next year, right? There's going to be more in wages, more in tipping fees. So therefore, you have to increase the garbage fee next year, and then the next year, and the next year. Take that one off the table. Tell Mr. Hilliard he misunderstood what the majority of the council wanted, that the only thing that's on the table is sales tax, and that's going to occur only after you make hard cuts. I look forward to the Freedom of Information response. Hopefully I don't have to wait a full week to get it.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else? Seeing no one else, comments from the council. Commissioner Decker.
Mayor, the only thing I have tonight is an executive session. Mr. Mayor, I move that a closed meeting or session of the City Council be held at the conclusion of this regular meeting to discuss the following matters according to exceptions provided in the Open Meetings Act and specified as follows. Section 2C1, the employment, appointment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. And Section 2C11, pending the litigation which is probable or imminent.
Second, please.
Second.
Commissioner Densberger, discussion, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Mingus?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Commissioner Densberger.
Just point out, Your Honor, Mr. Becker and Mr. Reeder are hard at work on the budget developed, and I believe Ms. Dennis is also working on a solid waste fee to bring it back as a detailed proposal for consideration. Obviously, we need additional revenue within the city, and those are, we have basically three alternatives or some combination of those three that we'll be considering, but that work is continuing, and probably expect something next week or the week after.
I actually sent out a draft of some of those things tonight as an example of how those funds could be used. It's very much a draft in a working document at this point in time, as if you look at the increase, what that would entail for each of the scenarios we kind of have outlined. So look forward to your feedback back there. My numbers are just that, draft numbers, trying to put some real dollars that you guys can all understand what the items costs. So if you know we add X dollars to our budget, what we get for those dollars, so.
But all of these proposals will address reserves.
Very good.
So that's all I have, sir.
I encourage that when we, prior to meeting next time, that we really look at having a plan and that we have some material to vote on, or at least to talk about, which I think you have.
That's
planned,
the objective.
whatever that might be. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Jeffers.
Just a few comments. The $500,000 deficit, which Mr. Gablehausen addresses, is, in our discussions, that really just gets us back to a zero capital budget. There's no dollars left at all for general fund capital expenditures. Even if we, once we break even, okay, we start from zero, now we still need all these things. And I agree that Pat Meyer had a great presentation tonight and detailed the inventory of our streets. And one of his closing remarks, as far as the inventory of our streets, if we could take care of everything we need to take care of, $40 million was the dollar amount he mentioned in inventory of items to do, repaving our main arterial streets as well as our residentials, our feeder streets. So, over a 10-year period, that's $4 million a year. Just for that, if you did over 10 years, we could. And he said, "Hey, hopefully we're lucky and we don't get the freeze. Things don't deteriorate as fast as we would possibly have." But $500,000 is really about. It's really about $6 to $7 million to really, if we could do everything we wanted to do, or should do. We've been putting off these cuts. No plow trucks the last couple of 3 years. No fire equipment really is budgeted in the long-term budget items to be paid for, et cetera. We've gone over that. I did try and reply back to you, Jeff. Your email would not allow me. I don't know if it's a spam filter kicked back to me. I couldn't respond back to you. You can check that. I did have a response, and so I don't mind talking with you about it, but it was unavailable, and I just didn't pursue any farther than that. But no, there's a lot of decisions, or at least things put to us to consider, and all of us have made various our position over the last couple, 3 years. The working sessions, I thought, were pretty good, actually, in detailing, or actually the budget presentations of the different departments. I know one thing we highlighted as far as the cut we had in this is sort of funny, I think, but we found, or Dennis and the guys found, we were paying for rental for for a freezer to hold our ice for public works employees, and so for the $400 a year in rental, we did away with that and bought a freezer, and we take care of our own ice, and that expense goes away. So we've gone down to that level and even below in our cost savings analysis, trying to come up with these cost savings, and I feel like we've done a pretty decent job. And we continue. That's an ongoing discipline that we have. We don't just stop. But we do have some really, for various reasons, a lot of capital needs in the city. And so we'll see how the votes all come out in the next few weeks, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Commissioner Call.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Commissioner Decker shared an interesting fact with me the other day, and I just want to make mention. 35 years ago this week, Chief Brewer made a very difficult decision, and a very unpopular one at the time. The private ambulance company that used to service East Peoria announced on a Friday that they were pulling out of here, and that following Monday, Chief Brewer made a decision to start having some personnel from the East Peoria Fire Department provide ambulance service to our citizens. At the time, like I said, it was very unpopular, and I look at where it came today, and I mean, that's one thing I'll say. There's been criticism since I've said on here about the cost of that department to the city. I don't apologize for it, and here's why. ALS certified, won't find a department like this outside of Chicago.
All our engines.
And I've literally, all of them, and I have literally seen the difference between life and death in the last 2.5 years. Not going to apologize for it. I think I commend Chief Brewer for being so brave back 35 years ago, and I look at what we offer today, and it's second to none in my opinion. So thank you for pointing that out. That was interesting. And then another high note, the Teresa Tracy Strive to Survive had a check presentation in the shared space, that portion of the room, Friday night. They raised $80,889 this year and donated those proceeds to the University of Illinois Foundation, the College of Medicine Peoria. A gentleman named Dr. Chris Gandhi does pancreatic cancer research, and they also split the proceeds with Illinois Cancer Care Foundation. And in April, we're going to go out to Illinois Cancer Care Foundation. We're going to roll out some exciting news that they have plans to use the funds for, and it's new to pancreatic cancer, and I think it's going to be exciting. I'll wait and let them make that announcement, but to date, in 5 years, this group's raised over $229,000 that they've raised and given away. And the thing that I'm most proud of is if you met all these people, it's all volunteer. And it's a year-long effort to put that thing off. And without the tremendous amount of businesses that support this cause, our local businesses, I don't care if it's St. Jude, what it is, they step up to the plate, especially when they know it's on a volunteer basis. And they're so supportive, and I appreciate that. And I thank them, and I thank all the volunteers and the participants because it was successful again, and it went to a great cause. So,
Good job.
yeah. That's all I have.
I think it's important to focus on the positive because there's so much more positive than negative in this city. And as leaders, we need to navigate our way through this situation, and we'll have more positive days ahead of us. Motion to adjourn, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn until Tuesday evening, February 20th, 2018 at 6 p.m.
Second, please.
Second.
Mr. Call. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Densberger?
Aye.
Jeffers?
Aye.
Call?
Aye.
Mayor Migas?
Thank you.
All
Aye.
present for the aye, Your Honor.
Hey, John, as far as all your equipment, what is it?